How do you use hard money in a seller finance transaction? As a hard money lender, I get this question all the time. So stick around because I'm going to tell you how to use hard money in a seller finance transaction. In a seller finance transaction, there are two different types of scenarios that you're going to come across. Scenario A is when the seller already has a loan on the property. Scenario B is when a seller has no existing loan on the property. Let's start with scenario A first, where a seller has a first mortgage on the property. So how do you use hard money in scenario A where the seller has a current mortgage on the property? This type of transaction is called a wraparound mortgage, and that's a topic for another video. But you want to know how to use hard money in this scenario. Usually, the seller is going to want a down payment. Let's say a seller wants a 10% down payment. You can get a hard money loan for the 10% down payment. However, you will need to get a hard money lender that will go in a second position in this transaction. Because the seller already has a first mortgage, if the seller wants a 10% down payment, you'll need to get that 10% from a hard money lender, and that hard money loan is going to go in a second position behind the seller's first mortgage. This is more tricky because most hard money lenders will want to be in a first mortgage position on that property. You will be able to find some hard money lenders that are willing to go in a second mortgage position behind the seller's first mortgage in this transaction. I personally will not go in a second position behind the seller's first mortgage on a seller finance transaction. However, as I said, there are a lot of hard money lenders out there that will. Let me give you an example of scenario A where the seller has a first mortgage. You see a property listed for $300,000. It's not selling. You go to the seller and say, hey, I will give you your $300,000 asking price, but I want you to seller finance. In this scenario, scenario A, the seller already has an existing first mortgage. The seller wants 10% down or $30,000. In this case, you are going to need to get a hard money lender that will go in a second position behind the seller's first mortgage for that $30,000. So now you have two loans. You have the seller financing of the $270,000 in a first position wrapped around the seller's first mortgage of $200,000 in this case. And then you've got a second mortgage, the hard money loan for the 10% down payment for $30,000 in a second position. Again, under scenario A, in a seller finance transaction where you have the seller with a first mortgage, you will need to find a hard money lender that's willing to go in a second position behind that first mortgage. So be ready to negotiate that with your hard money lender. Now let's talk about scenario B, where your seller doesn't have a mortgage on the property. In this scenario, seller wants a 10% down payment. You can get the 10% or $30,000 in the example of a $300,000 purchase price you can get that 10% from a hard money lender. However, the hard money lender is going to want to be in a first position on that property. And so will the seller if the seller is seller financing. So let's do that example again, $300,000 purchase price. Seller wants 10% down or $30,000 and the seller's willing to finance $270,000. Well, the seller's going to want to be in a first position and so is your hard money lender. So in this case, you need to be ready to negotiate with your seller about taking a second position behind the hard money lender. In this example, you would have the hard money lender's loan of $30,000 or 10% of $300,000 in a first position, and then you'd have the seller finance $270,000 in a second position. Again, be ready to negotiate with your seller when you know they don't have a loan on the property. If you're going to use hard money for your down payment, the seller will have to go in a second position behind the hard money lender. Now, a lot of sellers will want you to bring that 10% down or $30,000 in this case. They will want you to bring it down in cash. They won't want you to use a hard money loan. So again, be ready to negotiate that with your seller in advance, but know that your hard money lender will need to be in a first position on the property if they're loaning you the down payment. And if you want more advice and tips for how to fund your investment property purchases and refinances, follow me, subscribe to my channel here or on other social media platforms.